My name is Jolene Achara and I am 32 years old. 4 months ago, I was sitting in my office on the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Atlanta reviewing a stack of job applications for an entry-level operations position at my company when my chief of staff walked in and set 2 resumes on my desk and said, "These two flagged in the background screening process and I think you need to see them personally before we proceed." I picked up the first one. The name at the top was Kenneth Achara. I picked up the second one. The name at the top was Diane Achara. I set them both down on my desk very carefully, the way you set something down when your hands are about to start shaking and you don't want anyone to see. My chief of staff was watching me. She didn't know why those names mattered. She only knew they had flagged because the background screening system cross-references applicant surnames with company leadership, and when 2 people with the CEO's last name apply for the same position in the same week, the system generates an alert. I looked at the resumes. My father's listed 15 years of warehouse and logistics work. My mother's listed 12 years of retail and administrative support. Both listed a home address in Macon, Georgia. Both listed each other as emergency contacts. And both had applied for an $18 an hour operations assistant position at the company I built from nothing. The company that exists because 15 years ago these 2 people drove their 17-year-old daughter to a Greyhound station in Macon, Georgia, handed her a $10 bill and a plastic bag with 3 days of clothes and said, "You're on your own now," and drove away. I told my chief of staff I would handle these personally. She nodded and left. I sat in my office for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on my wall the way I used to watch the clock at the bus station waiting for a bus I couldn't afford, wondering if the bench I was sitting on was going to be my bed that night. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person who would understand. But I'll get to that. Before we go any further, if you have ever been abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect you and then had to face them again from a position they never imagined you'd reach, hit subscribe right now. And drop your story in the comments. Not the whole thing, just one sentence. The sentence that changed everything. I'll be reading them. Now let me take you back to Macon, Georgia, 2009, to a house on Vineville Avenue where the air conditioning hadn't worked in 2 years and the love hadn't worked in longer. The Achara household was not a household in any way that word is supposed to mean. It was a structure with people in it. 4 walls and a roof and 2 adults who occupied the same space the way strangers occupy a waiting room, tolerating proximity without ever actually being together. My father, Kenneth, was a man built from silence and resentment. He worked at a lumber distribution warehouse outside of Macon. He drove to work at 5:30 in the morning. He came home at 4 in the afternoon. He sat in a chair in the living room and watched television until he fell asleep in that chair, and then he woke up at some point during the night and moved to the bedroom and did it all again. He did not ask about my day. He did not ask about my school. He did not ask about anything because Kenneth Achara had decided at some point before I was old enough to notice that fatherhood was a duty he was performing under protest, and the less interaction required the better. My mother, Diane, was different, but not in the way that word usually implies when you're contrasting to parents. Different usually means one is warm where the other is cold. One is present where the other is absent. My mother was present. That was the problem. She was present and critical and relentless in a way that made her presence feel like surveillance. She monitored everything I did and approved of almost none of it. My clothes were wrong. My grades were insufficient. My posture was bad. My voice was too loud or too quiet. My hair needed doing. My attitude needed adjusting. She had a phrase she used so often it became the background music of my childhood. "You think you're special, Jolene? You're not special. Nobody in this family is special. The sooner you learn that, the easier your life will be." I heard that sentence or some version of it roughly 3 times a week for 17 years. Over 2,600 repetitions of the thesis that I was ordinary and that aspiring to be anything else was not just foolish but offensive. As if wanting more was a personal insult to people who had settled for less. I need to give you a specific memory because I believe specific memories carry more weight than summaries, and this story needs you to feel the weight. I was 12, 7th grade. My English teacher, Mrs. Calloway, had assigned a career day presentation. We were supposed to research a profession and present it to the class. Most kids picked firefighter or nurse or veterinarian. I picked CEO. I don't know where I got the idea. Maybe a magazine in the school library. Maybe a segment on television. But something about the concept of building and running a company caught in my mind like a fishhook and wouldn't let go. I spent 2 weeks researching. I made a poster board with statistics about women in business leadership. I practiced my presentation in the bathroom mirror because my bedroom shared a wall with the living room and I didn't want my parents to hear me rehearsing. The presentation went well. Mrs. Calloway said I was poised and well prepared. She wrote a note on my rubric that said excellent ambition and clear communication skills. Keep reaching, Jolene. I brought the poster board home. I leaned it against the kitchen wall where my mother would see it when she came in from work. She saw it. CEO, she read aloud. She looked at me. She looked back at the poster. Then she laughed. Not the kind of laugh that invites you to laugh along. The kind that pushes you out. A laugh that says the distance between you and that word is so large that even naming it is comedy. Jolene, who put this in your head? Nobody. I picked it myself. She shook her head. She picked up the poster board and leaned it against the trash can. Not in the trash. Against it. Close enough to make the point. You need to focus on something realistic. Get a trade. Get a certificate. Get something you can actually do. This? She gestured at the poster. This is fantasy. My father was in his chair. He said nothing. He didn't even look up. The television was on. I don't remember what was playing. I remember the sound of it filling the space where a father's voice should have been. I took the poster board out of the kitchen after she went to bed. I folded it and put it under my mattress. I kept it there for 5 years. I still have it. It's in a frame now, in my office, 14th floor. But I'll get to that. High school. This is where the erosion accelerated. Not a dramatic collapse. Not a single breaking point. Just the daily grinding away of whatever fragile thing a kid builds inside themselves when they're trying to believe they matter in a house that keeps telling them they don't. I was a good student. Not exceptional. Not valedictorian material. But solid. B+ average. I liked English and history. I was good at math when I tried, which was not always because trying at things in my house was treated as a form of showing off and showing off was treated as a capital offense. My mother monitored my grades, not out of investment, but out of control. If I got an A, she said nothing. If I got a B, she said, "See, that's your level." If I got a C, there was a lecture about how she didn't raise a failure and how I was going to end up on the street if I didn't get my act together. The irony of that particular warning would reveal itself soon enough. I had one friend, one real one, a girl named Shanice Walker. She lived 4 blocks from me. Her mother, Miss Evelyn, was the kind of mother mine should have been. Warm, present, interested. Miss Evelyn asked about my classes. She asked about my plans. She kept snacks in her kitchen that she put out specifically when I came over because she knew I was always hungry and she never once made me feel like I was taking something that wasn't mine. Shanice and I spent most of our free time at her house. My mother noticed. "You're always over there," she said once. "What's wrong with being in your own house?" Everything I thought. Nothing I said. Junior year. Something happened that set the clock ticking on my time in that house. I entered a business plan competition through a program called Junior Achievement. The assignment was to develop a concept for a small business, write a plan, and present it to a panel of local business owners. I developed a plan for a mobile cleaning service targeted at elderly homeowners who couldn't maintain their houses independently. I called it Cleanslate. I did the market research at the public library. I wrote the plan in longhand first and then typed it on the computer lab at school during lunch because I didn't have a computer at home. I built a basic financial projection using a template I found online. I practiced the presentation with Shanice until she could recite it herself. I won. First place. $500 prize. A certificate. A photo in the Macon Telegraph. A handshake from a man named James Whitfield who ran a janitorial company and served as one of the judges. He told me afterward that my plan was better than proposals he'd seen from adults applying for small business loans. "You have an instinct for operations," he said. "Don't let anyone talk you out of it." I went home with the certificate and the check and the newspaper clipping. I put them on the kitchen table. My mother picked up the check. $500? I won the competition. She looked at the check for a long time. "Well, that's grocery money for 2 months." She put the check in her purse. She took it. "I need you to understand that." My mother took the $500 prize I won in a business plan competition and called it grocery money and put it in her purse, and I never saw it again. I didn't fight her on it. I didn't argue. Because I had learned by then that arguing in that house was like throwing stones at a wall. The stones break. The wall doesn't move. My father said nothing about the competition. He did look at the newspaper clipping. He picked it up, read it, set it down. His only comment was they spelled our last name right. That was it. That was the full parental response to their daughter winning a business plan competition. $500 confiscated. Name spelled correctly. Back to your regularly scheduled invisibility. Now here is the part I need to tell you carefully because it is the hinge on which everything turns and I need you to feel the weight of the door. Senior year, spring, I was 17. I had been quietly applying to colleges. I did this entirely on my own. My guidance counselor, Miss Rivera, helped me with applications and fee waivers. Shanice's mother, Miss Evelyn, drove me to campus visits on weekends. I told my parents nothing because telling them would have meant submitting my dreams to their committee of two, and I already knew the vote. I got into 3 schools: Georgia State, Kennesaw State, and one reach, Spelman College. I got into Spelman with a partial scholarship that covered 60% of tuition. I was going to college. I was going to study business. I was going to become the thing on the poster board under my mattress. I told my parents on a Saturday morning in April. They were both in the kitchen, Mom drinking coffee, Dad eating toast. I stood in the doorway. I got into college. Spelman. I have a scholarship. I start in the fall. My mother set down her coffee. Who told you you're going to college? I applied. I got in. I have financial aid. My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at my father. Something passed between them. A decision that I now understand had already been made long before this moment. My college announcement didn't trigger what came next. It simply revealed what was already in motion. My mother spoke first. Jolene, we've been talking. Your father's hours got cut. I'm picking up extra shifts. We can't carry you anymore. I'm not asking you to pay for college. I have a scholarship. You need to start contributing or you need to go. I'm 17. You'll be 18 in 3 months. That's close enough. I looked at my father. Dad. He took a bite of toast, chewed, swallowed. Your mother and I are on the same page. On the same page. Like they were co-authoring a memo. Instead of discarding a child. What happened over the next 6 weeks was a controlled demolition. They didn't throw me out all at once. They dismantled my presence in that house piece by piece. First, my mother told me I needed to start paying rent, $300 a month. I didn't have $300. I was 17 with no job because I'd spent my senior year applying to colleges and studying for finals. Then my father told me I had until June 1st to figure out my situation. He said it like a deadline at work. Like I was a project that had run over schedule. Shanice's mother offered to let me stay with them. My mother found out and called Miss Evelyn and told her to mind her own business. She told me that if I moved in with Shanice's family it would embarrass her, not hurt her, not worry her, embarrass her. Image was the operating system of my mother's emotional life. Every decision she made was filtered through the question of what would people think, and the answer was always more important than what her daughter felt. June 1st. The day after my 17th birthday, which nobody acknowledged. My mother woke me up at 6 in the morning. Get dressed. Pack a bag. I packed a plastic bag with 3 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, the newspaper clipping from the business plan competition, my college acceptance letter. My poster board didn't fit, so I left it under the mattress. My father drove. My mother sat in the front passenger seat. Nobody spoke. The car smelled like coffee and morning air and something else. Something I didn't have a word for then but do now. Finality. We pulled up to the Greyhound station on Spring Street. My father stopped the car. My mother turned around in her seat and handed me a $10 bill. This should get you started, she said. Started. Started on what? I was 17 years old. I had $10 in a plastic bag and a college acceptance letter and no way to get to the college and no place to sleep that night, and the 2 people who were biologically responsible for my existence were idling in a car waiting for me to get out so they could drive home and fill my absence with whatever they filled it with. Relief, probably. One less line item. One less mouth. One less person to resent for needing things. I got out of the car. I stood on the sidewalk holding the plastic bag. My father pulled away from the curb. My mother did not look back. I watched the car until it turned the corner. And then I watched the empty space where the car had been. That was the last time I saw my parents for 15 years. I need to stop here for a second. If you have ever been left somewhere by someone who was supposed to keep you, whether it was a bus station or a relative's house or just the other side of a locked door, I need you to know something. You survived that. You are here. And the fact that you're here means the story didn't end where they left you. Drop a fire emoji in the comments if that resonates, because the next part of this story is how I made sure the story didn't just continue but became something they couldn't look away from even if they wanted to. $10 at a Greyhound station. Let me tell you what $10 buys you in June of 2009 in Macon, Georgia. It buys you a bottle of water and a pack of crackers from the vending machine and nothing else. It does not buy you a bus ticket. It does not buy you a phone call that lasts long enough to explain what just happened to you. It does not buy you dignity or safety or a single square foot of space where you are wanted. I sat on a bench inside the station for 6 hours. I watched people come and go, families reuniting, couples saying goodbye, a woman with 3 children and more bags than arms struggling through the door. Normal life happening all around me while I sat inside the wreckage of mine. At 2 in the afternoon, I used the station payphone to call Shanice. She answered on the second ring. Joe, where are you? I went to your house. Your mom said you left. I'm at the Greyhound station. What? They dropped me off. They gave me $10. Silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full. Full of the thing the other person is feeling but can't say fast enough. Stay there, she said. I'm calling my mom. Miss Evelyn arrived at 3:15. She didn't ask me what happened. She didn't ask me why. She walked into that station and she looked at me on that bench with my plastic bag and my $10, and she put both arms around me and she held on. She held on for a long time. Long enough for me to understand that holding on was a choice and that my parents had chosen the opposite. I lived with the Walkers for 3 months. Miss Evelyn gave me Shanice's older sister's bedroom. The sister had moved to Savannah 2 years earlier. The room still had her posters on the wall. Beyonce, a calendar from 2007, a mirror with stickers on the frame. It was the most beautiful room I had ever slept in because it was given to me without conditions. Miss Evelyn did not charge me rent. Miss Evelyn did not present me with a household contribution agreement. Miss Evelyn fed me dinner every night and packed me lunch for my summer job and drove me to orientation at Georgia State because Spelman was no longer possible. I couldn't make the numbers work without a stable home address and a guarantor and all the other infrastructure that college requires and that most 17-year-olds don't think about because most 17-year-olds have parents handling it. I enrolled at Georgia State in the fall. I commuted from the Walker's house for the first year. I worked 30 hours a week at a grocery store. I slept 5 hours a night. I maintained a 3.4 GPA because anything less would have meant losing the financial aid that was paying for everything. My parents wouldn't. And here is what my parents did during this time. Nothing. They did not call. They did not write. They did not ask Miss Evelyn how I was doing. They did not show up at the grocery store or the school or anywhere else I might be found. They executed a complete and total severance of the parent-child relationship with the efficiency of people canceling a subscription. I know because I checked. For the first 2 years I checked. I looked at my phone hoping for a Macon number. I checked the mail at Miss Evelyn's house even though my parents didn't know the address. I drove past Vineville Avenue once during sophomore year and saw the living room light on and my father's shape in the chair and the television glow, and I sat in my car for 20 minutes wanting to knock on the door and knowing that knocking would not open it. Year 3. I stopped checking. Not because the hope died. Because I killed it. Deliberately. Methodically. The way you put out a fire that is burning fuel you need for something else. I took every ounce of energy I had been spending on wanting them to come back, and I redirected it into the only thing that had never let me down. Work. Georgia State is where I met Dr. Adeline Frost, professor of operations management, 55 years old, silver hair she wore in a braid down her back, reading glasses she was always losing, a voice that could quiet a lecture hall of 200 without ever rising above conversational volume. She taught my Introduction to Operations course and she changed the way I saw everything. Not just business, everything. She taught me that the world is made of systems, supply chains, workflows, decision trees, feedback loops, and that the people who understand systems, who can see where they break and where they hold, those people don't just work in the world, they design it. Third week of class, she returned our first assignment. Mine had a note at the top, "See me after class." I went to her office. She was sitting behind a desk covered in papers and books and 3 coffee mugs in various stages of completion. "Your assignment," she said, holding up my paper. "You wrote about optimizing scheduling for a cleaning service." "Yes. Is this theoretical or is this based on something real?" I told her about Cleanslate, the junior achievement competition, the business plan I wrote at 16, The $500 my mother took. She listened. Her face did something specific while she listened. It organized. Like she was filing the information into categories and building a structure out of it in real time. You won a business plan competition at 16 and nobody helped you develop it further? No. She took off her glasses. That changes today. Dr. Frost became my academic advisor, my mentor, and over time the closest thing I had to a mother figure since Miss Evelyn. She sponsored my enrollment in the university's entrepreneurship incubator. She connected me with alumni who had started companies. She read every business plan I wrote with the same attention she gave her own research, and she never once, not one time, told me to be realistic. She told me to be precise. There's a difference. Realistic means lower your expectations. Precise means sharpen them. Junior year I started my company. For real this time. Not a class project. Not a competition. A registered LLC with an IN number and a business bank account that had $340 in it, which was everything I had saved from 2 years of grocery store work. The company was called Slate Operations. The name was a nod to Cleanslate, the business plan competition idea that had started everything. But the business itself was different, bigger, more ambitious. Based on everything I had learned from Dr. Frost and from the operational systems coursework and from my own bone-deep understanding of what it feels like when systems fail. People. Slate Operations was an operations consulting and management firm designed specifically for small to mid-sized businesses that were growing too fast for their infrastructure. The businesses that had outgrown spreadsheets but couldn't afford McKinsey. The businesses that were successful enough to have problems and too small to have solutions. I was the solution. I started with 3 clients. A catering company in East Point that was losing 20% of its revenue to scheduling inefficiencies. A landscaping company in Decatur that couldn't track its equipment or its crews. And a small chain of laundromats in College Park whose owner was so buried in operational chaos that he was considering closing 2 of his 4 locations. I fixed all 3, not with fancy software, not with expensive consultants, with systems, workflows, process maps, the unsexy foundational work that nobody wants to do and everybody needs done. I redesigned the catering company's scheduling and they recovered $84,000 in annual revenue. I built a tracking system for the landscaping company and their equipment loss dropped to 0. I restructured the laundromat chain's operations and the owner kept all 4 locations and opened a 5th. Word spread, the way it spreads in small business communities, not through advertising, through results. Someone tells someone who tells someone and suddenly your phone is ringing and you haven't spent $1 on marketing. Senior year I was running Slate Operations full-time while finishing my degree. I graduated with a 3.7 and a company that was already generating $180,000 in annual revenue. Dr. Frost came to my graduation. Miss Evelyn came. Shanice came. They sat together in the 3rd row. My 3-person family. The people who chose me after the people who made me chose to leave. I looked for my parents in the crowd. I don't know why. Reflex. Muscle memory. The phantom limb of a family that had been amputated. They weren't there. Of course they weren't. They didn't know I was graduating. They didn't know I was alive. After the ceremony, Dr. Frost handed me a card. Inside it she had written, "You are not what was done to you. You are what you built with what was left. Dr. A. Frost." I put that card in my wallet. It's still there, worn thin at the creases. I touch it sometimes when I'm in a meeting and the stakes are high and I need to remember who I was before I was this. The next 8 years were the building years and I need to compress them because this story is about the collision that happened 4 months ago, but you need to understand the scale of what collided. Year 1 post-graduation. Slate Operations expanded to 25 clients. Revenue $420,000. I hired my first employee, an operations analyst named Marcus who I found through Dr. Frost's alumni network. Year 2, 60 clients. Revenue $1.1 million. I moved out of the co-working space I had been operating from and leased my first real office. A small suite in a building in Midtown Atlanta. Year 3, I made a strategic decision that changed everything. I stopped doing one-off consulting and developed a proprietary operations management system, a software platform built on top of the methodologies I had developed working with small businesses. I called it Sladios. I partnered with a developer named Yemi Okonkwo who I met at a tech meetup and who understood my vision immediately because he had grown up watching his parents run a small grocery store in Lagos with the same kind of chaotic manual systems I had been fixing. Sladios launched year 4. 200 businesses signed up in the first 6 months. By the end of year 4 we had 800. Year 5 we raised a seed round, $2.4 million. Year 6 a Series A, $14 million. Year 7 we crossed 5,000 businesses on the platform. Year 8 the numbers became the kind that make people's eyebrows move when you say them at dinner. I won't detail every milestone. I'll give you the current state. Slate Operations today has 12,000 businesses on its platform across 38 states. We have 280 employees. Our annual recurring revenue is in the high 8 figures. We occupy 2 floors of a building in downtown Atlanta. The 14th floor where my office is has a glass wall that faces south, and on a clear day you can see all the way to the airport. On my desk is a framed copy of the Macon Telegraph clipping from when I was 16. Next to it is the poster board from 7th grade, the one I kept under my mattress, now professionally mounted in a clean black frame. The word CEO is still there in my 12-year-old handwriting, purple marker. Below it in smaller text, I added something last year. Told you. Forbes profiled me last spring. Fortune put me on their 40 under 40 list. I gave a keynote at the Inc. 5000 conference. I sat on a panel at Davos. Not bad for a girl whose mother told her she wasn't special and whose father couldn't be bothered to look up from his toast. I met my wife Cassandra 3 years ago. She's a pediatric nurse. The irony of falling in love with someone in the same profession my mother worked in is not something I engage with consciously, but I'm sure my therapist has thoughts. Cassandra is warm in the way that warm people are without trying. It just comes off her like heat from a surface that's been sitting in the sun. We have a daughter, Amara. She turned 1 last month. She looks like me but has Cassandra's temperament, which means she will grow up expecting to be loved loudly, and I will make sure she is right. I have not spoken to my parents in 15 years. I have not called. I have not written. I have not driven past the house on Vineville. I have not Googled them. I have not asked anyone about them. I performed the same severance they performed on me, except mine was a response and theirs was an initiation. And that difference matters, even if the outcome looks the same from the outside. Aunt Roslyn, my father's sister, is my one remaining connection to that world. She calls me every few months. She came to my wedding. She sends Amara gifts. She is careful with information. She doesn't volunteer updates about my parents unless I ask, and I don't ask. But she has told me things over the years, small things, that my parents are still in Macon, still in the apartment on Vineville, that my father's warehouse closed for years ago and he's been bouncing between temp jobs, that my mother is still doing CNA work but her back is bad and she can't do the physical parts like she used to, that they are struggling, that they are getting older in a city that is getting harder. I absorb these updates. I file them. I don't act on them. Not because I don't feel anything. Because feeling something and owing something are different, and I learned that difference at a bus station with $10 in my hand. Now, the resumes. 4 months ago, a Tuesday, my chief of staff Valentina walks into my office. She has to resumes. She explains the surname flag. She leaves. I look at the resumes. Kenneth Achara, applied for operations assistant, 18-hour, lists 15 years of warehouse and logistics work. Skills include forklift operation, inventory management, shipping and receiving. References available upon request. Diane Achara, applied for operations assistant, 18-hour, lists 12 years of retail and administrative support. Skills include customer service, data entry, scheduling. References available upon request. They applied together, same position, same week, same company, my company. The company founded by the daughter they left at a bus station. The company built on the back of everything they told me I couldn't do. I need to walk you through what went through my mind, because it wasn't simple, and anyone who tells you a moment like this is simple is lying. First there was the shock, physical. My hands went cold, my chest tightened, I felt the office chair under me more acutely than I had felt anything in months. The body remembering what the mind had filed away. The body saying this is not over. This was never over. Then there was the question. Did they know? Did they know this was my company? Did they apply because they discovered that their abandoned daughter was now a CEO and this was their way back in? Or did they apply blindly to a job listing on Indeed and the universe arranged the collision without their consent? I looked at the applications again. Neither one mentioned me. Neither one listed any connection to the company beyond the application itself. The cover letters were generic. Dear hiring manager, I am writing to express my interest. 15 years of experience. Hard worker. Team player. The language of desperation dressed up as professionalism. They didn't know. They had applied for an $18 an hour job at their daughter's company and they didn't know it was their daughter's company. This meant one of two things. Either they had never once in 15 years searched my name online, which was possible given that they had showed no interest in my existence since the day they dropped me off, or they had searched and hadn't connected Jolene Achara, the CEO, to Jolene Achara, their daughter, because the distance between those two identities was too vast for them to bridge. Either way, the conclusion was the same. They did not know me, not the me I became, not the me I was. They had stopped knowing me at 17 and everything after that was someone else's daughter. I called Aunt Roslyn. She answered the way she always answers. Hey baby girl. I told her about the resumes. The silence on her end lasted a long time. Oh Lord, she said finally. Oh Lord, Jolene. Did you know they were looking for work? Your father's been out of steady work for almost a year. Your mother's hours got cut. Roslyn paused. They're behind on rent. I've been helping where I can, but I'm on a fixed income and there's only so much. They applied to my company, Roslyn. Both of them. For an $18 an hour position. Do they know it's yours? I don't think so. Another long silence. What are you going to do? I don't know. Yes, you do, Roslyn said quietly. You've always known what to do, Jolene. That's why you're where you are. She was right. I did know. I just needed time to separate the knowing from the feeling because the feeling was a 15-year-old storm and the knowing was the structure I had built to stand inside it. I took a week, 7 days. I didn't make any decisions. I didn't process the applications. I didn't reject them or advance them. I let them sit on my desk and I looked at them every morning when I sat down and every evening when I left. During that week, I talked to 3 people. My wife Cassandra, who held my hand and said, whatever you decide, I'm with you. My therapist Dr. Kim, who helped me separate the decision from the trauma. And Dr. Frost, who answered her phone on the first ring as she always does and who listened to the entire situation and then said one sentence. The question isn't whether they deserve the job, Jolene. The question is what kind of leader you want to be when it's personal. On the 8th day I made my decision. I called Valentina into my office. These 2 applicants. Schedule them for interviews. Both of them? Both of them. Standard interview process. Same as any other candidate. But I'll be sitting in. You'll be personally sitting in on interviews for an $18 an hour position? Yes. She looked at me. She didn't ask why. Valentina has worked with me for 4 years and she has learned that when I make a decision that seems unusual, there is architecture behind it that she can't see yet. She scheduled the interviews for the following Thursday. Back to back. Kenneth at 10. Diane at 11. I need to tell you about those 2 hours because they are 2 of the most important hours of my life, and I need you to be in that room with me. Thursday, 9:45 a.m. I'm in conference room A on the 14th floor. Glass walls, a long table, 3 chairs on one side for the interview panel, 1 chair on the other side for the candidate. The Atlanta skyline through the window behind me. I'm wearing a navy blazer, white blouse. My hair is pulled back. My name tag says Jolene Achara, CEO. It is the most visible I have ever been and I am about to be seen by people who made me invisible. Valentina is on my left. Marcus, who has been with me since the beginning, is on my right. They both know now. I told them the day before. Marcus, who grew up in foster care and understands abandonment the way I do, put his hand on my shoulder when I told him and said, I've got you, Chief. Valentina, who is normally composed, pressed her lips together and blinked several times rapidly, which is the Valentina equivalent of a breakdown. 10 o'clock a.m. The door opens. My father walks in. He is 56 years old. He looks 66. gray at the temples, thinner than I remember. His hands are rough and his posture is the posture of a man whose body has been used as a tool for 30 years and is starting to show the wear. He's wearing khaki pants and a button-down shirt that has been ironed with visible care. He is trying. The effort is legible. That detail landed somewhere in my chest and I filed it away for later. He sat down in the candidate chair. He looked at the three of us across the table. His eyes moved from Valentina to Marcus to me, and stopped. The recognition took for seconds. I counted. Old habit. His eyes narrowed, then widened, then his mouth opened slightly, then closed. Then his hands, which had been resting on the table, curled into loose fists. Not aggressive, protective. The way you make fists when you're trying to hold yourself together. Jolene. Good morning, Mr. Achara. I'm Jolene Achara, CEO of Slate Operations. This is Valentina Cruz, Chief of Staff, and Marcus Whitmore, VP of Operations. Thank you for coming in today. I said it in my interview voice. Professional, warm, neutral. The same voice I use for every candidate. The same words, the same cadence. Because this was an interview and he was a candidate and whatever else he was, in this room, in this moment, that was the frame. My father stared at me. His jaw was working. His eyes were filling. He opened his mouth. I held up my hand slightly, just slightly. Mr. Achara, we have your resume here. Could you walk us through your professional background? He looked at me for a long moment. Then something extraordinary happened. He understood. He understood that I was not going to have a reunion in this conference room. I was going to conduct an interview. And if he wanted to be in this room, he was going to have to meet me where I was, on my terms, in my house. He began talking about his work history, warehouse operations, forklift certification, inventory systems, shipping logistics. His voice shook for the first 2 minutes. Then it steadied. He answered Marcus's questions about process management. He answered Valentina's questions about software proficiency. He was honest about his limitations. He said he wasn't strong with computers but was willing to learn. He said he was reliable. He said he showed up. I asked one question. Mr. Achara, what motivates you to work? He looked at me. I need to provide, he said. That's what I've always done. Provide. I wrote something on my notepad. I don't remember what. I remember the pen moving. I remember the sound of it on the paper. I remember thinking that the word provide was doing a lot of work in that sentence and most of it was inaccurate. The interview lasted 30 minutes. Standard length. I thanked him. I told him we'd be in touch. He stood. He walked to the door. He put his hand on the handle. Then he turned back. I didn't know, he said. I didn't know this was your company. I didn't know you were. He stopped. He looked at the floor. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at me. I didn't know. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Achara. He left. I had 7 minutes before my mother's interview. Marcus looked at me. You okay? I'm fine. That was the hardest thing I've ever watched. Wait. 11 o'clock a.m. The door opens. My mother walks in. She is 54. She looks exactly the same. That was the thing that caught me off guard. My father had aged visibly. My mother had somehow preserved herself in the amber of whoever she was 15 years ago. Same posture, same set of the jaw, same way of entering a room like she's already assessed everything in it and found it wanting. She sat down. She looked at the panel. She saw Valentina. She saw Marcus. She saw me. The recognition was instant, faster than my father's. My mother always was quicker with faces, quicker with assessment, quicker with judgment. Her face did not crumble the way my father's had. It froze. It went absolutely still, like a system encountering an error it hasn't been programmed to handle. Jolene? Good morning, Miss Achara. I'm Jolene Achara, CEO of Slate Operations. My mother's hands went to the arms of the chair. She gripped them. Her knuckles went pale. What is this? This is your interview. You applied for an operations assistant position. We're here to discuss your qualifications. She stared at me. I watched her cycle through emotions the way a slot machine cycles through images. Shock, confusion, something that might have been shame but that hardened quickly into defense because defense was my mother's native language. I didn't know this was your company. It's on the website. My photo is on the About page. My name is in the application confirmation email. I don't look at those things. I just applied. I understand. Shall we proceed? She wanted to say something else. I could see it. The words were right there behind her teeth. But she looked at Marcus and Valentina and she understood the same thing my father had understood. This was not the kitchen on Vineville. She was not in charge here. She could not take a $500 check and put it in her purse. She could not lean a poster board against a trash can. She could not hand her daughter $10 and drive away. She was in my building, on my floor, at my table. She did the interview. She was stiff but competent. She answered questions about her experience, customer service, scheduling, data entry. She said she was a hard worker. She said she was dependable. I asked her the same question I asked my father. Miss Achara, what motivates you to work? She looked at me, and in that moment the mask slipped. Just for a second, just long enough for me to see behind it. And what I saw was not the woman who told me I wasn't special. It was someone smaller, someone tired, someone who had been standing behind that mask for so long she had forgotten it was there. Survival, she said. I work to survive. The interview ended. She stood. She did not turn back at the door. She walked out, straight, rigid. The walk of a woman who has just been seen by the person she abandoned and cannot process what she saw looking back. I sat in the conference room for 20 minutes after she left. Marcus and Valentina sat with me. Nobody spoke. The Atlanta skyline glittered through the glass. Somewhere on the 14th floor a phone rang. Somewhere below us 280 people were doing the work of a company that a 17-year-old girl built from a bus station bench and a $10 bill. I made my decision that evening. I sat in my home office with Amara asleep in the next room and Cassandra reading on the couch. And I wrote 2 letters, one to my father, one to my mother. Different letters, same message. The letters said this: I am not offering you a job. I am not offering you that because hiring my parents to work for me would turn a professional organization into a personal therapy session, and my 280 employees don't deserve that. What I am offering you is a conversation. One meeting, in person, at a location of my choosing. If you want to understand who I became and why, if you want to understand what you left at that bus station and what it grew into, show up. If you don't, I'll have my answer, and it will be the last time I reach out. I mailed the letters to Vineville Avenue. Same address, same mailbox, different sender, different universe. They showed up, both of them. A coffee shop in Macon that I chose because it was 2 blocks from the Greyhound station. I wanted the geography to do some of the talking. They were already seated when I arrived. Same side of the table, close together, united in their discomfort the way they had once been united in their decision to leave me. I sat across from them. I ordered coffee. I let the silence stretch because I have learned that silence is a room and the first person to try to fill it reveals the most about themselves. My mother spoke first. You look good, Jolene. I'm doing well. We can see that. My father, quiet, eyes on the table. I didn't do this to make you feel small, I said. The interview, the letters, this meeting, this isn't about power. It's about truth. I told them, all of it. The Walkers, Georgia State, Dr. Frost, Slate Operations, Slatios, the Forbes article, the keynote, Cassandra, Amara, everything they missed, everything they chose to miss. I spoke for 25 minutes without stopping and they listened without interrupting, and that might have been the first time in the history of the Achara family that both of those things happened simultaneously. When I finished, my mother was crying, not the way she used to cry, which was performative and designed to redirect attention. Real crying, the kind that makes your face ugly and your breathing ragged and your dignity irrelevant. My father was not crying. His face was doing what his face always did, holding, containing, but his hands on the table were trembling, not shaking, trembling. The way a structure trembles when it's bearing more weight than it was designed for. We were wrong, my mother said. I know that. I've known it for years. Then why didn't you call? Because what do you say? How do you call your daughter after what we did? What words are there? You could have started with I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She said it immediately, without hesitation. I'm sorry, Jolene. I'm sorry for the bus station. I'm sorry for the $10. I'm sorry for the poster board. I'm sorry for the $500. I'm sorry for every single day I made you feel like you didn't matter. My father looked up. I'm sorry too, he said. For all of it. For the chair. For the toast. For never looking up. I should have looked up. I sat with their apologies. I held them the way you hold something you've been handed that you didn't ask for and aren't sure where to put. Carefully. Without commitment. I have conditions, I said. They nodded. Therapy. Both of you. Individual and together. This is non-negotiable. You need to understand why you did what you did before I can trust that you won't do it again. Not to me, to Amara. Because if you are going to know your granddaughter, you are going to know her correctly or not at all. agreed. My mother, immediately. I'm not going to hire you. I need you to understand that. Working for me would be a disaster for everyone involved. But I've arranged for a job placement service to work with both of you. Interviews, resume support, skills training. I'm covering the cost. Not because I owe you, because I can. My father looked at me. You don't owe us anything, he said. I know, Dad. That's why I'm doing it. We sat for another hour. We talked about Amara. I showed them photos on my phone. My mother made a sound when she saw Amara's face that I cannot describe except to say it was the sound of someone meeting a grief they didn't know they were carrying. My father asked how old she was. I said 1. He nodded and his chin trembled and he pressed his lips together, and I saw my father fighting harder than I had ever seen him fight, and he was fighting against himself. We are not fixed. I want to be clear about that. We are not a family. Again, we are 3 people who share a last name in a wound, and who are now tentatively, cautiously, with the skepticism of someone who has been burned, reaching toward a stove, trying to figure out if there is anything left. My mother has started therapy. She calls me every 2 weeks. Short calls, careful calls. She asks about Amara. She asks about work. She does not give unsolicited advice. She does not tell me I'm not special. Once she said on the phone, "You were always special, Jolene." I just couldn't say it because saying it would have meant admitting I wasn't. I wrote that down, not because I needed to remember it, because I wanted to see it in my own handwriting, proof that the words had been said out loud. Finally, my father texts. He is not good at texting. He sends short messages with periods after every sentence. The periods make every text sound formal, like a man writing a telegram. He sent a photo last week, a selfie, first selfie he's ever taken. He was at a job interview, new shirt, nervous face. He wrote underneath it, trying, 1 word, 1 period. I wrote back, proud of you. And I meant it the way you mean things that are small and true and just barely enough. I'm in my office. It's evening. The 14th floor is quiet. Through the glass I can see the city. The lights coming on. The world below me doing what the world does. Moving, building, trying. On my desk is the poster board. Purple marker. CEO. Told you. Next to it is the $10 bill. I kept it. All these years. I never spent it. It sits in a small frame next to the poster board. Not as a monument to what they did. As a monument to what $10 couldn't buy and what I built instead. If you are watching this and you were left somewhere, a bus station, a doorstep, a childhood that ended before it should have, I want to tell you what Miss Evelyn told me the night she picked me up from that Greyhound station. You are not what they left behind. You are what walked forward. Walk forward. Keep walking. Build the thing they said you couldn't. Become the person they never imagined. And when they finally see you, when they finally look up from the chair and the toast and the television and the $10 bill, let them see someone who doesn't need them to look. Someone who built the whole building while they were looking the other way. That's not revenge. That's not justice. That's just what happens when you take a plastic bag and a bus station bench and a poster board that someone leaned against the trash, and you refuse, you absolutely refuse, to let that be the end of the story. My name is Jolene Achara. I am 32 years old. I am the CEO of a company that my parents applied to work for, and the $10 they gave me when they left me is framed on my desk. I never spent it. I didn't need to. I had everything I needed. The moment I decided that their absence was not my ending, it was my beginning. 4 plates at Sunday dinner now. Cassandra, Amara, me, and 1 empty chair. I haven't decided what to do with yet. Maybe I'll fill it. Maybe I won't. But it's my chair, in my house, at my table. And that's the whole point. If this story hit you, if it made you think about the chair you're sitting in and how you got there, leave me a comment. Tell me about your $10 moment. The moment someone gave you nothing and you made it into everything. And subscribe if you haven't, because the next story is already written and I think it might be the one you need most. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.